some things in life are inevitable. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live, or what you do. It makes no difference how powerful, how popular, or how prominent you've grown. One's accumulated wealth or wisdom is of little, if any, significance. Regardless of effort or endeavor, there are truths so tightly woven into the fabric of human existence that they become unalterable and absolute. Sureties which each and every one of us will encounter sooner or later. Benjamin Franklin, for instance, may have been thinking along these lines when he first quipped, "In this life, the only things certain are death and taxes." Those, admittedly, are two. However, if I may, I would like to add to the list a third: change. Now, that probably strikes many of you as being so obvious that it hardly needs mentioning. But all the same, I don't think I'm alone in observing that, at least in this transient, temporal world, nothing remains constant for very long. Seasons come and go, nations rise and fall, and the pendulum of cultural values is forever swinging back and forth from generation to generation. Try as one might, we can never step twice into the same river, because that which once was no longer is, nor shall it really ever be again. Of course, I suppose you could argue that that's precisely the way it was meant to be. And yet, even if change weren't part of the overall design, I suspect it would still be one of our greatest desires. After all, don't we often claim that variety is the spice of life? If nothing ever changed and every waking hour were sort of stirred together into this bland porridge of predictability, with each dull and tiresome day trailing off into the next like so many colorless beads, we would quickly find ourselves as bored and restless as a classroom of third graders during the closing week of school. Indeed, it seems to me that there are some changes which we actually welcome. Bride and groom, for example, stand nervously at the altar, whispering to one another the words that now unite them as husband and wife. Granted, they may not fully appreciate the fact, but their lives, from this very moment on, will change in countless ways. Nevertheless, for most couples, it is a welcomed change. On the way down to the maternity ward, you stop off at the store to purchase an infant car seat and an extra supply of diapers. The baby's room is freshly painted, and much of the morning has been devoted to the paternal, albeit painstaking, task of assembling a crib. With all of the excitement, it may not have had time to dawn on you, however. Your entire life is about to change. Still, it's a welcome change, is it not? They throw a small party for you over at the office. Someone stands up with a smile on his face and a gold watch in his hand, joking that now that you're retired, you'll finally have a chance to do a little traveling, or maybe even straighten out those awful slices in your golf swing. As they go around the room, congratulating you, best wishes mingle with goodbyes, and the tears are tempered by promises to keep in touch. But at the end of the day, as you shuffle a few personal belongings into a cardboard box, you begin to realize that your life is going to change. Usually, though, it is a welcomed change. I mean, you've planned and prepared for it, and so when the anticipated event at last arrives, it's frequently a change well received. Of course, you know as well as I do that not all of life's changes are like that. Sometimes change is confusing and chaotic. Sometimes change is disturbing and disruptive, and often change can be extremely frightening. I stood not long ago on a hillside beneath a weather-worn canopy, surrounded by flowers and the gentle sprinkling of tiny cards which read, "You have our deepest condolences." And I watched a woman, now for the first time a widow, slowly move to the casket, pinching off the stem of a single rose and clutching it tenderly to heart. Reverend, she would later confess, I don't think my world will ever be the same again. He was my very best friend. Life entails change. Sometimes it is welcomed, other times it is not. But in every instant it serves as a silent testimony that even that to which we fervently cling can never remain constant for very long. It is, I think, a truth of which the Israelites were already aware. Obviously, they had seen more than a few changes over the course of their tumultuous journey. In fact, in the opening verses of chapter 24, Joshua actually reminds them of such, stepping through the centuries in short, creed-like stanzas. He begins to recite the extensive litany of names and events, recalling everyone from Abraham to the Amorites, from Jacob to Jericho. And I dare say, you can almost picture the people taking a collective breath at the sheer exhaustion of it all. They knew firsthand, to be sure, the inevitability of change. But the thing about it is, here at Shechem, Joshua seems to want them to recognize another inevitability as well. Ironically, it is a certainty brought on by change itself, the inevitability of choice. Because, like it or not, change necessitates choice, and choice necessitates decision. From Joshua's perspective, the trial is over, and the jury can no longer afford to be out. Ample evidence of the Almighty's presence has been provided. Their own history has proven a credible witness. The concluding arguments have all been delivered, and the time has come for the people to submit a verdict. Now, therefore, revere the Lord, he declares, and serve God in sincerity and in faithfulness. If you are unwilling to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods that your ancestors served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Joshua 24, verse 14 and 15. In other words, here are the alternatives, says Joshua. Now make up your minds. Those who intend to serve the Lord, step forward. The rest of you, good luck. At least on the surface, the matter appears to be rather clear-cut. I mean, it's not as if the prophet is asking these people to write an essay or fill in the blanks. This is more or less a multiple-choice exam. A, the gods of your ancestors. B, the gods of the Amorites. C, Yahweh, the Lord God of Israel. Take a pencil and circle one of the above. Sounds simple enough, right? Well, not so fast. Keep in mind that the Israelites are dwelling in a society which has a veritable smorgasbord of deities. You name it, they have it. Simply pick up a menu and order a little heavenly intervention a la carte. Problem with your crops? Try the third idol to the left. Bow 3 times, leave a contribution, and you'll be harvesting within a couple of months. Over there, with the long line and the dancing girls gyrating on the stage out front. Pay a visit to the sacred prostitutes, and your cattle will be blessed with a bountiful offspring. There are plenty of gods to go around, or so the surrounding culture suggests. So why take chances? Life entails change. There's no telling what the future will bring, and hence it might be a good idea to have a few different gods around, just in case. I mean, we don't want to burn any bridges, right? Leaving one's options open could prove favorable somewhere down the road. It seems an enticing argument, I'll admit. But for Joshua, it's beside the point. In a word, being favorable is irrelevant. It's not a question of choosing what is helpful. It's a question of choosing what is true. Quite frankly, if Yahweh is not the one true God, then serving the Lord is hardly an essential choice, no matter how beneficial it might turn out to be. However, if Yahweh is the true God, then serving the Lord is the only essential choice, regardless of whether it provides any help at all. Make no mistake, truth is the crucial issue for Joshua. And perhaps truth needs to be the crucial issue for each of us as well. Or to put it quite bluntly, it doesn't take much faith to choose what is favorable. Believing in God merely on the basis of what the Almighty is able to do for you is like trying to save money by purchasing stamps before the postage rates increase. You're missing the larger picture. Even an agnostic will occasionally concede that religion does some good here and there, or that Jesus Christ taught virtuous morals, told nice stories, and offered worthwhile advice. But that's a far cry from a decision to follow him as Lord and Savior. The world has never lacked for advice, and so it seems to me a little more makes no difference whatsoever. The question we must answer is not whether Christianity is good, still less whether it is helpful, but whether it is true. C.S. Lewis, I think, expressed it best. Christianity is a statement which, if false, is of no importance, and if true, of infinite importance. The one thing it cannot be is moderately important. In short, there simply isn't any neutral ground to occupy on this issue. Granted, in a life of continual change, it's tempting to assume that the safest policy is one of wait and see. But the real question is not what will be safe. It's rather what is sound. And the only answer to that question is the answer Joshua himself gives. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. For even in a world where nothing remains constant, the truth of God's abiding love lives on, remaining throughout eternity, a love that cannot change and will not cease. As a matter of fact, you can stake your life on it, because it is out of such love that Jesus Christ ultimately gave his. Now, therefore, if you choose this day, 3 times the prophet presses upon these people the dire necessity of this decision. And no doubt, a few in the crowd might have found his stern insistence somewhat startling at first. However, what should have absolutely shocked them is the offer itself. After all, for most of Israel's history, Yahweh has been the subject of choice, not the object. Usually it is God who does the choosing, and the people who are mercifully chosen. Usually it is the people who call out, and it is they who must wait upon the Lord's reply. Here, surprisingly, the roles are reversed. The call has gone out, only this time it is heaven which must wait a reply. More than anything else, I think this is the reason that the question is so urgent for Joshua. Heaven is waiting for a response. And if you ask me, the question is no less urgent for us today. Choosing to love or hate, to give or to hoard, to become involved or to withdraw, choosing to reach out and mend a torn marriage or to let it continue to unravel at the seams, choosing to apologize for hurtful words, and we now regret and wish we could recant, or to add another brick in the wall of silence that exists between us and our neighbor, choosing to devote one's life to something that will mean something and make a difference in this world, or to settle into your seclusion of your own, satisfied with a good credit rating and a secure retirement. The decision is ours. The opportunity now. For heaven itself may very well be waiting. Some years ago, I heard the poignant story of a woman struggling to reestablish a relationship with her father. When I was a child, she recalled, my dad and I were as close as could be. And the times I knew it best would be at those family reunions when, after the big meal, they'd move all the furniture, crank up the stereo, and start playing polka records, one after the other. Eventually, someone would put on the beer barrel polka. It was our special song, and my father would come over with outstretched hand and say, come on, girl, let's roll them blues away. And we'd dance. My father and I, we'd dance. As a teenager, however, I started to despise the silliness of those family get-togethers. I remember one occasion in particular when, for reasons known only to adolescents, I sat moping on the sofa in one of those don't associate with anybody moods. As the beer barrel polka began to play, my father came over with outstretched hand. But I glared at him with icy indifference. "Just leave me alone," I muttered under my breath. Startled, he turned and never invaded my privacy again. He danced with my mother. He danced with my sister, but not with me. I'd come home from a date, and he'd be waiting for me in the old chair, his bathrobe loosely tied at the waist, an open book in his lap, half asleep. "What are you doing up?" I'd say. "Why don't you just go to bed?" He'd look at me with sad, pleading eyes and whisper, I was just waiting for you, that's all. I was waiting for you." I was glad to leave that house when I finally graduated high school. My father and I had a distant, formal relationship, but not much more. Eventually, though, I began to miss what we had once enjoyed. Only I wasn't quite sure how to bridge the gap until one day, when I happened to be home for a family reunion, somebody put on the beer barrel polka. As my father walked across the room, I went up to him with outstretched hand and said, "Daddy, I believe this is our dance." He looked at me and smiled. "I've been waiting for you. I've been waiting for you." "As for me and my household," Joshua proclaims, "we will serve the Lord." Are there any other takers? The choice is ours. The time is now, and all of heaven awaits.